Ever since I was little, I had a great interest in vehicles. And in my childhood, there were 5 prominent vehicle-related interests: Thomas and Friends, Hot Wheels, Speed Racer, Chuggington, and most importantly of all, and the subject of today's video, Pixar's Cars. Undoubtedly, Cars as a franchise has likely crossed your path in some form or another, be it through movies, toys, video games, storybooks, comic books, or YouTube videos. Its impact on the global stage, evident in box office successes and merchandise sales, is extremely undeniable. Whether you like this series or not, you cannot say that it wasn't successful. I have loved this franchise ever since the year I was born. No, seriously, the first Cars movie from 2006 was the first movie I've ever watched. It came out the year after I was put onto this planet, and ever since, I caught up with the franchise as I grew older. However, Cars as a series has had a pretty, let's say, rusty relationship with the general public, with many either loving or hating this franchise, or somewhere in between, with many choosing to believe it as either an underrated franchise or an over-merchandised mess. Enter me. After prolonged absence from the series, I've come to return to this beloved nostalgic franchise, armed with my intention to rank every animated entry in this beloved childhood series. From Pixar's main trilogy, Disney Toons spin-offs, the plethora of shorts, and the recent Disney Plus TV show, this video aims to answer the age-old question posed by the unlucky Tug. Is Cars a good franchise? Brace yourselves, as the answer may defy your expectations. But before we dive into the nooks and crannies of this series, I want to tell you how this video was made. When it came to planning Cars content for my channel, I wanted to review each movie individually in a long series of retrospectives, like Unlucky Tug's Thomas retrospective, with thumbnails I even designed in advance for them. But then, I watched a certain video. I was inspired by another ranking video a YouTuber named Platty did. It was called Ranking the Shrek Franchise, which I think you should all check out too. But many months ago, I thought to myself, hey, what if I made a video akin to Platty's, but focus on the Cars series with my own review style? Not to mention, it could make for a video longer than both the Mighty Express and Motor City videos combined. A surefire way for an extremely long video that could gauge interest in not just Cars, but also my channel. A brand new series format that could inspire future rankings down the line. Buckle up, Waksters! We are going in depth into each animated entry, barring the video games, comics, and books as well. They aren't animated, as we go back in time to revisit one of my favorite childhood loves. Grab your snacks and drinks, fellas. It's gonna be one long and bumpy ride as we dive into a ranking that I've been planning to do for a very, very long time, with 7 entries and 1 champion. That's right, this is the Cars franchise ranked and reviewed. Parking on to number 7. Last place is a movie that has been hated by many, but not hated enough.
This movie blows!
Look, I know I'm not the first person on the internet to cover this movie for the entire planet, but screw it, let's rip apart this lump of slag for your entertainment, folks. Cars 2 doesn't deserve to get let off the hook just this once. Before some of you tell me that you like Cars 2, I do respect your opinion. I know people like Bob Show enjoy this movie, and I'm aware of how people like Mr. Enter prefer it over Cars 1. That's fine. After all, it's okay for you to enjoy whatever. But I cannot seem to like Cars 2 even if I tried. In fact, I think I hate this movie more than the average Joe. Indeed, Cars 2 is not only the worst entry in this entire franchise, not only is it Pixar's worst movie ever made, not only is it one of the worst sequels ever made, but it's also one of my least favorite big budget blockbusters of all time. No, I'm not joking. Before I get angry at the stalling hunk of junk, I'll list some positives. First of all, I love Francesco Bernoulli. This Maxi wannabe is unironically the only good character in this entire movie because of how he is written. He's a showboating moron, yes, but unlike Chick Hicks or Jacqueline Storm, I do appreciate that he was a good rival to McQueen, because Francesco was genuinely good at what he was doing, instead of just, playing rough. About that sport, I like the World Grand Prix as a concept. And I would have rather had the World Grand Prix be the focus of this movie. You know, the part that's actually about the racing. The one part that actually feels like a natural extension of the first movie's world. You could do so much more in a world populated by cars. Like, what if Lightning McQueen met different types of race cars? I also like the spy characters' personalities. Finn and Holly are pretty good characters. Until the fact they mistake Mater for a spy, but that will be a later complaint. Another factor I like are the action scenes, which indeed are good on their own, if you don't consider this as a Cars sequel. Coupled together with Michael Giacchino's awesome score, this movie is at least not boring to watch. Then again, he worked on the scores of both Speed Racer and The Incredibles, so of course it's peak soundtrack. Other songs in the soundtrack, like the You Might Think cover by Weezer or the Nobody's Fool song by Brad Paisley, are pretty good songs indeed. Also, you know I can't talk about Cars 2 without mentioning this scene.
We'll find the second agent and kill him.
My favorite scene is the bit where Rod Torque Redline gets interrogated and then murdered in a rather brutal manner in what's essentially a kids movie about talking vehicles. The build-up is suspenseful, only to culminate in him answering before being killed. I'll give props to this movie for being like any other Pixar film. It's not shy from showing dark stuff, which is something most kids media refuse to show. What else can we talk about Cars 2 that's good? Oh, that's it. That's literally it. Everything else, it sucks! This movie's plot doesn't follow up from the original in an organic way because it's about an action spy thriller instead of, well, appreciating the beauty of simplicity. At least with other bad sequels, despite being worse than the originals, at least try to stay in the same genre as the original. I get that John Lasseter wanted to make a spy movie as the sequel for personal reasons, but did he even consider how monumentally stupid of an idea Cars 2 is? It seems like Lasseter wanted to integrate secret agent thriller elements no matter what, and this mentality is what killed this movie from day one. Even the previously mentioned promising addition to the World Grand Prix is mishandled, with two conflicting plots vying for attention and neither receiving justice. It feels like they took two scripts and bound them together with duct tape and Elmer's glue. In an ideal scenario, this movie would have been about Lightning competing in the World Grand Prix to cope with the loss of Doc Hudson. If you want more on what I mean, go watch Isaac Carlson's video on this subject. That would actually be thematically tied to the first movie's setting and themes. But nah bro, let's make this movie about secret agents instead! Golly gee, surely that won't go horribly wrong. Oh wait. Speaking of the plot, even if you separate this from the original Cars movie, the story is terrible beyond all belief. It makes zero sense, and it relies on way too many contrivances and leaps in common sense to make the plot work. Like, the biggest examples include, why would Miles Axelrod hide himself in a secret meeting when it's supposed to be a secret? Why not show your entire bonnet in the entire darn meeting? Oh, so that Mater doesn't know who he is when he's disguising, just so we can have the stupid half-baked plot twist reveal scene with poor build-up. Hooray! I love twist villains. Why are the Lemons' private meeting in a public area when anyone can just roll in and call the cops? In fact, when the Lemons capture any of the spies, they do it in public places. How come nobody calls the cops on them? Oh yeah, so they don't get caught due to plot reasons. Why are Holly and Rod planning to do their exchange in a public bathroom where anyone can just roll in and see? Oh, so we can have this dumb action scene and get Mater roped into this messy plot. Why, on this green earth, does Axelrod mention pollution?
It costs a fortune. Pollution is getting worse. I mean, come on, it's a fossil fuel. Fossil, as in dead dinosaurs.
Like, all the species are gas-powered, so theoretically, the Earth should have looked like the one in Wall-E a long time before the first movie. So why isn't the Earth in bad condition if everybody's a vehicle? Oh yeah, so you can have the stupid eco-friendly equals bad message in this kid's movie. And most ridiculously of all, why doesn't Holly Shiftwell use the spy wings in all the previous situations that were at high stake? Oh, so we can have the school London escape scene and sell more toys. Like, you couldn't have used that earlier to save Finn or Mater? Or even used it to escape being cornered by Ivan? Use the freaking wings! I know people complain about Toy Story 4 using way too many contrivances. Like, Bo P being conveniently in the same place as the RV's destination. But this is absolute chicanery over here! Not only there are contrivances, but every main character is a bloody idiot. Like, every main character is dumbed down to make this wretched plot work. From McMissile, to Holly, to even McQueen, all dumbed down to service Mater's stupid personality in this movie just to make him look smarter. All in favor of making the spies think Mater is one of them. For cars who seem to be the world's best secret agents, Finn and Holly sure are idiots. They drive along with whatever Mater says that's being put out of his exhaust pipe so that it makes hard to take two of them seriously whenever they do something cool. Like, how can I take you two seriously when you're just gonna roll around with whatever moronic, goofy thing Mater does and then call that quote-unquote hard work? On the subject of Mater, well, his character is painfully degraded in this movie. Mater worked in the first movie not just because he was a comic relief, but because he was a foil and an essential character to Lightning McQueen's journey. A happy-go-lucky, yet well-meaning spirit who's a counterculture to McQueen's cynical, hard-headed ego. Mater ultimately helped him realize through his carefree nature that McQueen should value his friends and to not take them for granted. This right here, this is what made Mater a great character to begin with. Here, Mater is just stupid for the sake of it. Haha, Mater pisses oil. Haha, Mater mistakes wasabi for ice cream. Haha, Mater mistakes the Japanese girls' bathroom for the men's bathroom. Haha, the computer misinterprets what Mater is saying. Haha, Mater disguises himself as different ridiculous vehicles so he can buy the diecast 5 pack of it. I get it!
Shut up! Just shut up, you idiot!
Mater's flanderized in this movie to the point where it makes him unlikable as a protagonist. It's the same reason other animated spin-offs like, say, 2015 Minions movie or Planet Sheen do not work. Without Gru or Jimmy Neutron, the Minions and Sheen are just flat out annoying without another character to play around with. Oh, but you might ask, but didn't Finding Dory in Monsters University do just fine with Dory and Mike Wazowski? But here's the thing, Mike and Dory were expanded upon personality-wise to make them likable, being given backstories, fears, goals, and motivations that enhance their characters. Mater does not work in Cars 2 simply because he is given no motivation, or even a backstory or a reason to care for him. There's no expansion or a legitimate improvement to Mater's character anywhere in this travesty. He's just annoying. End of story. This is gonna be a weird comparison, but heck, even that awful 2020 Scoob movie, the one that focused on action and cinematic universe stuff, instead of the general appeal of the Scooby-Doo franchise, much like what Cars 2 did with the Cars series, at least it made its main comic reliefs put into the focus remotely likable and somewhat developed beyond funny ha-has. Mater in comparison is just a thin cardboard cutout. On the topic of Mater, him and McQueen's relationship is consistent at first, yet it evolves into purely bad writing in the scene where Mater and McQueen have a misunderstanding cliche breakup scene because it presents itself like Mater is in the wrong. Yet, McQueen has every right to scold at him for distracting him during that race in Tokyo. Like, if my friend screwed up my race, of course I'd have the right to get angry at him or her. In fact, I'd argue McQueen is out of character in that scene. Blowing up in front of your friend just because he made you lose the first race was definitely a bad writing decision. The scene in Cars 3 where McQueen blew up with Cruz made sense because he was in a dire situation. He wanted to prove to the world that he still had it in him, but he was so frustrated that he didn't make any progress, just because he wasn't willing to take proper help at first. Here, McQueen only lost the first race and took out his anger on his friend in the most forced because drama way possible. Wasn't the point of Cars 1 was that McQueen learned that the racing for winning isn't important to him? Speaking of bad writing decisions, not to mention they tried to shove in a half-baked moral of Mater learning to accept that he is an idiot. Literally saying in the movie itself that it's fine to act the way how you want to act, which in theory is fine, but in practice, it feels like you learn nothing by the end because of said moral. Not only that, but it also gives kids in the audience that being stupid should be rewarded. It just raises some eyebrows. It makes this movie no different from the Emoji Movie, for crying out loud. Both were just trying to shove in the message of being yourself, but it was executed in the worst way imaginable. Do you know what else raises some eyebrows? The Lemons. The villains of this movie being these broken down discriminated cars gives the impression that the Lemons are this universe's equivalent to minorities or disabled people. I know it's a kids movie, but it's surprisingly ableist, Pixar. How can I take them as sympathetic in the scene when they feel bad about themselves? When Axelrod tells them that they should be on top of the world, when they just kill cars left and right. Not to mention the aforementioned disabled comparison gives me a bad taste of this movie's world, you know. The movie's world building, arguably worse than its predecessor and successor, introduces human concepts without thoughtful integration. However, I won't dwell on this too long or else I end up like the unlucky Tug.
How do the cars drink the beer out of it? There are no straws. They don't have hands. How do they pick the glass up?
But bear with me, and I'll admit, 1 and 3 don't have the best world building in the universe, but at least was creative in how it presented some aspects while still looking like our own. Whereas Cars 3 doesn't have good presentation, just throws them human concepts into the wall and expects you to run with it without thought put into the integration of its universe. With insulting contradictions, awful writing, frustrating characters, a half-baked message, contradictory world building, and a terrible concept, you have a recipe for one of the worst sequels I've ever seen in my life. I know I give credit to a lot of controversial things I watch in the animation space after initially hating them, only for me to come back to them to realize they're not that bad, or simply just okay in my book. But even with redeeming qualities, that isn't even enough to save Cars 2. Like I know the animation and the score are good, and Francesco's a good character, and I like the Rod Twerk red line interrogation scene. But even then, that's not enough to save this movie from the trash compactor. At worst, it's a disrespectful pile of scrap that fundamentally destroyed Cars as a movie and as a concept. A sequel that even makes my least favorite Pixar sequel, the painfully mediocre Incredibles 2, look like the first movie by comparison. And in fact, it's the only Pixar sequel and movie in general that I can confidently call a giant 2-hour toy commercial. At best, it's a bland advertisement with a great soundtrack and animation style. But even then, that's an insult to literal textbook toy commercials disguised as cartoons that have writing that doesn't talk down to its audience. Cars 2 is a movie that, for me, is hard to enjoy because it goes out of its way to frustrate the viewer for as much as humanly possible, making it hard to enjoy both as a standalone movie and as a sequel to a beloved IP. Yes, I know people love clowning on your typical atrocious sequels. You know, Son of the Mask, Pacific Rim Uprising, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, Shrek the Third, Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, yada yada yada, you get the idea. Whatever, I'll admit, those are more boring to watch than Cars 2, or aren't as interesting as that movie either. That's right! While all of them, including Cars 2, ruins something pre-existing, I think Cars 2 gets the sequel message wrong the most out of all of these terrible fallouts personally, and for one good reason. It ruined the reputation of the Cars franchise to the general public moving forward. With those other movies, they made people respect the originals even more. But with Cars 2, everywhere I go, I keep seeing people rank Cars 1 and 3 very low or call them bad movies. Like, I know opinions are opinions and all. I understand if you don't like those movies, and it's fine to think that. But people love to hate on them for being the stupid merchandise-driven snorefest that has a convoluted and confusing world. While Cars 2 fits that term well, I think it's unfair that Cars 1 and 3 get the same treatment from the general public. It's like what Shea Frillis said about Shrek the Third and how it ruined the first and its sequel's reputation by making people see like it was an unfunny joke. Both that and Cars 2 ruined the reputation of the first movie by making everybody seem like it was a boring atrocity. Speaking of YouTubers, I know Gaming Magic 13 isn't the most reputable source of content, especially after his terrible Toy Story 4 review and the controversies he faced like criticizing Sonic Heroes and Persona 5 over his poor understanding of the gameplay, or villainizing Josh Cooley over directing a movie he didn't like. But this one time, I do agree with him on something. That Cars deserves better as a franchise, as he stated in his Cars on the Road video.
Cars franchise as a whole is viewed as a joke. It's the punching bag. Everyone loves to jump on it as the crap franchise where it's all unfunny humor and abysmally slow pacing and ineffective emotional beats, and the fact that they made a million spin-offs about the dumb idiot tow truck and everyone hates him, yada yada yada, whatever, I don't care. Cars as a franchise deserves more respect. And maybe you think that's a dumb hill to die on, but that's fine. I know it's not a flawless series, I've never claimed it as such, and you're never ever gonna hear me defending these movies as cinematic masterpieces, but you know what? There was some really powerful stuff in those movies.
Like, yeah, Trevor, Cars does deserve way more respect. Congratulations, Cars 2. Thank you for not only disrespecting the franchise, but forever destroying the reputation of your own series. Shame on you. You deserve a 2 out of 10. And I say 2 because while there is some undeniably good animation and action and one good character in it is Abomination, it's still not enough to salvage this movie. If there's one bad sequel I think that's worse than Cars 2, at least it's better than Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate by a country mile. That's the one sequel I hate more than Cars 2 because of the same reasons, but with none of the redeeming qualities that made Cars 2 slightly tolerable.
It looks awful.
Keep the fun going with Megamind rules.
Though in all seriousness, if you want to watch a spy movie involving a racing conspiracy with a Michael Giacchino score, I'd suggest watching the Wachowskis' 2008 Speed Racer movie. That film knows what to do with its plot, while also having a great message. Or, if you want to see another action racing wombo combo under Disney's belt, consider seeking out Motor City. I made a whole video about it months ago, so it's a must watch if you know where to look. Now the worst of the worst is all done. All there is left is to go up, right gang? Right? Flying onto the 6th place spot is the textbook definition of a generic animated racing movie. While this is a part of the Cars franchise officially, I know this technically wasn't labeled under the Pixar brand. In fact, it was made by Disney Toons Studios of those low-effort Disney direct-to-video sequels from way back when. However, I'm counting the Plains duology as Cars movies for completionist sake. I mean, it is about animated entries in the Cars franchise as a whole. Am I right? So, Disney Toons Plains initially appears as a move to capitalize on the success of the Cars franchise through merchandise sales to expand the brand's universe. And with that said, I'd say they did a good job capitalizing on that aspect. Yet, delving into the stupid supposed to be direct-to-video film reveals a loose bag of positives and negatives, highs and lows, even. On the positive side, the character lineup is decent, even if it's not groundbreaking. Dusty Cropphopper serves as a serviceable protagonist, while Sonic, Ripslinger, serves as a serviceable antagonist, fitting the bill without breaking new ground. Dusty as a protagonist in this movie isn't as good as McQueen, but he's indeed a better character than Mater in Cars 2 for at least having more common sense, and a functioning brain. However, everyone else ranges from being genuinely good characters to off-the-wall cliches, like the idiot sidekick, the voice of reason, the exotic love interest, the Mexican lover boy, the snooty upper-class French woman, or the cocky British man. Yeah, they're okay, I guess, but they're nothing you've never seen before in terms of presentation, to put it lightly. But for me, the highlight of this cast, though, is Skipper Riley himself. Much like Doc Hudson, he serves as a great mentor figure for the main character. But I think he has a more tragic backstory despite Doc coming from a way superior movie. Skipper led several of his rookie planes to their death by accident, leading for him to suffer trauma and the ability to not fly. What is this, a Cars movie or a war story? The fact that the subject of war was introduced into what was otherwise a cheap spin-off is commendable to say the least, I guess. Seeing Skipper witnessing his own men die in battle and being scarred by the wounds of war is genuinely heartbreaking. It makes me wish this movie is more about a war veteran who finds solace in helping a younger plane in how to fly. A role reversal of Cars 1, if you will. Much like those movies, the score, which this time was composed by Mark Machina, is pretty good and memorable, fitting the mood of each scene well enough and makes you feel immersed in each scene. Other songs like Nothing Can Stop Me Now or Fly are pretty catchy and unforgettable. The animation's decent, not as good as Pixar mind you, but it wasn't bad, not half bad even. For an outsourced production, it almost looks cinematic, but at the same time it's missing some of that Pixar spark, Another positive I enjoyed is a detail I don't see many bring up. Dusty is scared of heights, and yeah, it makes sense in hindsight because he's only flown so close to the ground all of his life, being a crop duster and all, farming and stuff. His learning to get out of his comfort zone is a pretty relatable moral for kids and maybe even adults. As much as we are scared to get out of our comfort zone, it's okay for us to get out of our usual limits every once in a while. Before I get complaining, onto this movie's greatest strength. While I think the racing aspect is recycled from the main car series, I do appreciate this movie's respect for the history of aircraft by crop dusters, stunt planes, experimental planes, or wartime planes. It really shows how much research Disney Toon has done in preparation for this movie, and they worked as hard as much as Pixar on that front. And not to mention, I really like how this movie looks and feels like the art style of the main Cars movies. Like, the character designs are really great, and they match the style of Pixar's models pretty well. Okay, now on to complaining. I'll see myself out. Well, not necessarily as egregious as Cars 2. In terms of negatives, Planes is very generic. Well, nothing wrong with generic, but I appreciate Cars 1 and 3's risk-taking factor more. Cars 1 and 3 took risks with their plots and wanted to subvert expectations for the audience. Planes just doesn't feel like that. It doesn't challenge its audience with anything groundbreaking. Planes honestly feels like the exact kind of movie people who haven't seen Cars 1 think Cars 1 is before watching it. Cars 1 tried to break the mold of what an animated sports movie can be. Whereas Planes 1 is just a typical animated sports movie, like something like, say, DreamWorks Turbo, for instance. A corporate cash grab sports movie that plays things straight and safe and by the numbers without doing anything remotely unique for it to stand out. Another bad aspect is how the world, much like Cars 2, is just putting human stuff on the wall with no rhyme or reason other than any thought put into the presentation. It gets annoying, especially when considering that World War II is canon, and not only that, but the lack of the Twin Towers in the New York race suggests that 9/11 happened, and that's a whole another can of worms I don't want to discuss. Also, not to mention how in one scene, we see Dusty and Chug watch top 10 plane crashes of all time, which in this universe implies that death recordings are normalized enough to be viewed on casual sports television, which is just messed up, if you think about it. And also, just like Cars 2, this movie's just not funny. Like, there's some occasional good jokes, like this scene right here.
So, I heard you shot down 50 planes.
You looking to be number 51?
But overall, I feel like most of the jokes just fall flat with having good ideas but bad execution, which you can say about a majority of the movie. Finally get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. The most glaring issue with Planes lies in the contradictory nature of its message. The decision to upgrade Dusty into Racing Plane by the end feels somewhat inconsistent with the initial moral of this movie, which I'll explain in a bit, but the final message suggests that even after urging individuals to step out of their comfort zones, the film concludes by changing all of their parts. Dusty constantly getting new parts by the end of the day ruins the message the movie seemingly wanted to tell. That no matter where you come from, no matter your struggles or fears, you can reach your dreams. It also shows that you could become a hero or a champion no matter where you come from. But the way how the message is executed in the final movie just makes it seem out of taste in my opinion. This film's handling of Dusty's modifications contrasts with how Dottie was tuning his engine just fine without changing his overall appearance. If he could do that, what's stopping him from Dusty from getting his engine tuned further? Though, what's funny about this is that I think the aforementioned DreamWorks movie, Turbo, the one I just mentioned earlier, ironically, is better than Planes in terms of its message. You wanna know why? Because the titular character wins as a normal snail by the end, due to him losing his powers before realizing from his brother that he needs to be himself to win. Somehow, Turbo is not only funnier than Planes, but also just slightly better in terms of writing. Don't at me! Not to mention that Dusty somehow lucks his way into the race. Like, Dusty loses in the tryouts to Fonzarelli, who later turns out he's been using illegal fuel to power his engine. Like, that came out of nowhere and just makes the tryouts feel like a waste of time. At this point, Dusty should have signed up for the race without doing any tryouts. It just feels like filler, honestly. Like, what the fridge? Like, yeah, they need to set up that he won by accident but doesn't account for how risky of a task that is, but the entire moment's so off to me in my opinion. But maybe you can come up with a better way for the tryouts to work, I don't know. In conclusion, Planes just comes across as a very mediocre baby's first sports movie with an unexpected war story element present for at least 1 or 2 minutes. Despite its flaws, I would still recommend Planes over Cars 2 because at least it maintains consistency in both its plot and tone. While Cars 2 is more memorable in my opinion, Planes is just solid and watchable with a consistent yet shallow narrative. While it is a movie meant to be a corporate brand extension, it's watchable enough for me to rank it higher than Cars 2, earning an overall 3 out of 10 rating in my book. Planes is the Cars equivalent to Disney's Witch. A hodgepodge of miscalculated yet decent ideas that just so happens to be poorly thought out and also just very generic. Though at least, granted, I'd rather watch Planes again over what's essentially a 100th anniversary disaster of a movie, but generic is still generic, which is a good thing because like Cars 2, I don't have to watch it ever again. Sayonara, Planes! Parking on the 5th place spot is a streaming exclusive that doesn't challenge its franchise in the slightest. Cars on the Road has become a topic of contention within the Cars fanbase, sparking a range of opinions from love to hate, though I find myself going the line between labeling it as mediocre and outright bad. Before I start complaining, I'll list up some positives. I do like the wholesome vibe of the series, and it's at least not boring even if the episode concepts are rather off the wall. Some episodes like the Salt Fever episode or the Trucks episode legit got a ton of enjoyment out of me. Also, I did enjoy how the show avoids the character derailment witnessed in Cars 2. Mater and McQueen's personalities shine, demonstrating improvement over their friendship's portrayal in the second movie. Their dynamic strikes a balance between support and disagreement without descending to pure mean-spiritedness. Mater isn't a total idiot, unlike his portrayal in Cars 2, and actually has a functioning brain. He actually has a character in this show, being sometimes the voice of concern or even the onlooker to what McQueen does. However, new characters like Ivy and Mato barely scratch the surface, reminiscent of the newbies seen in stuff like the Bob the Builder reboot or the hit era Thomas seasons, lacking screen time or enough personality development to suffice. Similar to my criticism mentioned in the Mighty Express review, Cars on the Road frequently focuses on too much absurd scenarios that it's hard to take any of its characters or the story seriously. While it's at least confined to 10-minute episodes instead of a 2-hour movie, it often seems more focused on impressing the audience and driving toy sales than focusing on good writing, which is the same thing Cars 2 and Planes fall into, sadly, where brand extension takes precedence over making a competent product. The show itself, acknowledging the occasional lack of coherent world building, doesn't even excuse the fact that this show is a disappointing continuation following the more impressive and promising Cars 3. In my ideal Cars Disney Plus series, the show should have centered around Cruz Ramirez learning the ropes of racing under McQueen's guidance, exploring their mentorship in greater depth, and developing their rivalry with Jackson Storm. If the road trip angle was a must by the bigwigs, this show could have focused on the themes rooted in car culture, akin to how the first and third Cars movies did. Instead, it delves into toyetic gimmicks like dinosaurs, ghosts, clowns, and monsters, which, while inspired, feel kinda out of sync with what came with the best entry. While this show at least acknowledges how dumb some of the concepts are, like the car dinosaurs or the car afterlife, it still feels very weird for what started as a grounded franchise. Speaking of grounded, the episodes Salt Fever and Road Rumblers are the only episodes that feel in line with the first and third Cars movies thematically. They focus on aspects of car culture like Gasland's culture movies like Mad Max or actual Salt Flats racing. I'd rather had gimmicks tied back to car culture so the series is like tonally consistent. This could have been an opportunity to explore more of that, you know? One notable aspect that warrants a bit of nitpicking is the apparent lack of references to older Cars works. While there's a passing mention of McQueen trading Cruz, it falls short of delivering any sort of nods to significant parts of the Cars series. This omission becomes even more apparent when compared to a certain other Pixar show, which I'll delve into shortly. Although On the Road features recolors of existing characters like Alexander Hugo, Gail Buford, Guido, El Chupacabra, Sterling, or even Van, it feels like a missed opportunity to bring back old characters instead of just reusing them for background assets. The initial announcement teases the return of old faces, creating anticipation among fans. It unfortunately didn't turn out like that. We only got Cruz and that's it. Rather than recycling old character designs, they should have just, well, reintroduced old characters in meaningful ways. Like, imagine an episode where McQueen and Mater meet up with Dusty Crophopper at Proposh Junction, tapping into the nostalgia of the Planes movies and connecting it seamlessly with the Cars franchise after a long absence in the public eye. Another interesting possibility could have been an episode featuring McQueen racing against the tuners from the original Cars movie, or even an episode of McQueen meeting Francesco again. Of course, there's an argument to be made against excessive fan service, especially considering the modern pitfalls of modern content. Like, have you seen Ralph Breaks the Internet or even the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie? Yeah, don't do that. However, well thought out integration of these references could have elevated On the Road from being just another generic diversion to a memorable watch for longtime Pixar and Cars fans. Well, speaking of Pixar, do you know what other show from Pixar expands the brand with old stuff and new stuff with fan service, but in a meaningful way? Monsters at Work! Comparatively, despite being from the same streaming service, It manages to strike a better balance as a TV series and as a continuation. I get there are some writing critiques from certain YouTubers, but it expands the home series meaningfully, offering enough screen time to both new and familiar characters, along with logical world building and callbacks to both Monsters Inc. and Monsters University. Though it may seem like a hot take, Monsters at Work appears superior in terms of concept and storytelling, even with its cheaper outsourced animation in comparison to Cars on the Road. In summary, Cars on the Road falls into the realm of mediocrity, with a whopping 4 out of 10 score. It's neither as grating as Cars 2, nor as generic as Planes, yet it's a watch I'd rather not see again. It resides in the middle of the bad metric scale, though the biggest accomplishment I can give it is that it's neither frustrating nor generic, but it won't stop me from hating this show till my dying breath. Going back to Gaming Matter 13's review, I agree with his sentiment that the show doesn't change Cars' reputation as a made-for-babies franchise in the eyes of many, contrasting the potential displayed in the first and third installments. Not only that, but it's evidence that Pixar sees Cars as a cheap, toy-driven sellout when it easily could have been something more. Overall, a below-mid experience at best, though it's another short-form Cars series that's infinitely superior despite being kinda average. Parking at number 4 is a series of serviceable, yet fun shorts that deserve a watch. Cars Toons stands out as a passable endeavor amidst the plethora of attempts to cash in on the franchise. Unlike the taking the seriously approach adopted by Cars 2, Planes, and On the Road, it takes a not-so-serious approach to its zany ideas, serving as a collection of enjoyable shorts, each lasting 3 to 2 minutes. Cars Toons series provides a quick burst of entertainment without taking itself too seriously. However, these shorts introduce a set of challenges by raising questions about the stupidity that is the Cars universe. The inclusion of stuff like monsters, aliens, and even time travel begs the question as to what the writers were even smoking to some people. Despite the seemingly outlandish premises designed to boost the sales of Mattel's diecast, the saving grace lies in fact these shorts don't overstay their welcome, offering a passable diversion for young kids that doesn't demand to be taken seriously or considered to be part of the official canon. Considering that, especially in the Mater's Tall Tales shorts, Mater makes up most of them. Plus, it's not like most of the shorts have these outlandish ideas, because some like Radiator Springs 500 and a half, and even Tokyo Mater, be in tune with the rules the first and third Cars movies play by. In a unique twist, I'll be embarking on a rapid fire session to individually rank each short, as this approach aims to set the segment apart from the others. To ensure a fair assessment, I'll be incorporating shorts from those released outside the Cars Toons banner, like Pixar Popcorn or the DVD exclusive shorts, resulting in a comprehensive ranking encompassing all of the shorts within the Cars franchise. So brace yourselves for a speedy journey through the diverse world of shorts. Ready, set, go! Number 20, Dancing with the Cars. It's just a dance test animation disguised as a short and nothing more. Number 19, Unparalleled Parking. Yet another test animation disguised as a short. Seriously, who approved the Pixar Popcorn? But Chick Hicks is in this, so I'll give it a pass. Number 18, Bug. Nothing very interesting, kinda cute stuff with more red moments, but super forgettable. Number 17, Spinning. Some more dancing montages, but overall more interesting than Dancing with the Cars. Number 16, Hiccups. Other than McQueen's new hybrid paint job, it's easily very forgettable. Number 15, Miss Fritter's Racing School. A dumb commercial parody that actually gives some insight into Fritter as a character, but it's also just very forgettable. Number 14, Elevator Door. It's cool Mater almost dies in this, but even as a kid, I never really found the appeal of this short. It's also very forgettable. Number 13, Vitamin Mulch Air Spectacular. Relies on a poop joke way too much, but it was at least interesting with its comedy and writing. Still pretty mid though. Number 12, Mater the Greater. It's nostalgic for me being the first one I saw, but nothing sticks out to me as well. Number 11, Rescue Squad Mater. Another one of the least interesting Mater shorts, but at least there were some funny puns like the STP one. Number 10, Moon Mater. Some creative usage of puns like Nazca or Impala 11, but nothing too special, but it's still pretty good. Still, it's cool seeing what space travel is like for these cars. Wait, hold on. Hey, why did they breathe in space without a respirator? Number 9, Air Mater. It's cool that we see Prop Wash Junction and Skipper from Planes 1 in this, serving as a good world building exercise before that movie even came out. Pretty good short. Number 8, Heavy Metal Mater. I love the comedy in this short, as well as how it escalates just from a fly of all things accidentally causing Mater's rock career to start. Classic short. Number 7, Monster Truck Mater. Some cool new character designs with an intriguing concept, plus a lot of funny gags. Number 6, Unidentified Flying Mater. Has a lot of wholesome Mater and Mator moments, even though it has a dumb premise. though I do find it creative that the aliens in the Cars universe are spaceships. Number 5, Tokyo Mater. Despite being somewhat of a teaser for Cars 2, it's pretty cool for a Tokyo Drift parody, with some memorable new faces, hilarious gags, and cool action scenes. Number 4, Time Travel Mater. For another dumb premise, it's actually a good piece of world building for the Cars franchise. Seeing Stanley discover Radiator Springs and meeting Lizzie for the first time was pretty wholesome to see. Number 3, Mater Private Eye. It's a pretty solid short with an intriguing mystery and a serious tone. A good love letter to crime mystery movies in all honesty. Number 2, Radiator Springs 500.5. Has a lot of great gags, fun new characters, interesting world building, and an inspired concept. Not only that, but it reuses the spooky forest idea that scarred me as a kid from the deleted scene of Cars 1. Number 1, Mater and the Ghost Light. It's not only a very classic short, but it also has a genuinely great message for kids to not belittle others for tricking them. On top of having funny, intense moments, and it also gives Mater character development for not having to not tease others. As a whole, Cars Toons and the Cars shorts in general are kinda okay, scoring a 5 out of 10. Maybe a 5.5 because how interesting they are in comparison to the last 3 entries. Interesting and funny, but nothing too special except for the top 10. I'd rather see these again over On the Road personally, as it doesn't take too much time, with some episodes being ambiguously canon, making this show mostly non-canon with a few undeniably canon exceptions. Now that these 4 entries are out of the way, we can finally get into the above average and good stuff this time! Landing in the 3rd position, we encounter a film that, while undeniably fine at the bare minimum, has enough effort whose accomplishments shouldn't be forgotten. Planes, Fire and Rescue is a movie that, on a rewatch, it's actually way better than I originally thought. In fact, I initially thought it was mid at first couple years ago, but in actuality, it's slightly above mid. Dare I say, it's kinda decent. But before I can praise this movie, I have some complaints as usual. For starters, the movie revolves around Dusty's gearbox failing, and is hiding that fact from his teammates at Piston Peak Air Attack until the part where he and his team leader, Blade Ranger, get into a situation causing him to spill the beans on what happened. This part bothers me because there's no established reason for Dusty to hide it. If it was because Blade was super strict when he first arrived instead of when he messed up, maybe they could have shown Dusty trying to lie about why he came to Piston Peak. Like, imagine a Blade Ranger was angry and strict from the very start, not just to Dusty but to his entire team too, prompting Dusty the initiative to lie to his face about why he came to this place. Though as is, the movie does a fine enough job, but this one detail could have elevated the narrative a tiny bit. A big nitpick I have with this movie is Dusty's engine. In the first movie, they specified Dusty as a PT-6A engine.
Does a PT-6A have a multi-stage compressor?
And in the sequel, they state that this engine has retired production. This makes no sense as the PT-6A engines are still being manufactured to this day, still being in use by airplanes worldwide even to this day. Even during this movie's production. It didn't cross my mind until I saw a certain comment on the Trev Productions review on Fire and Rescue, commenting on this. And now you know that, you can't help but wonder if they should have said Dusty's engine was some type of other engine. Or here's a smarter idea, don't mention the engine at all! A big complaint that I am willing to share and acknowledge is that Fire and Rescue retreads some of the same plot elements as the first movie, like how Dusty has a fear of something, learns from an old guy, and then gets over said fear. This is a valid complaint, but honestly, it is pretty well executed in this movie compared to the first, which makes Fire and Rescue the superior Planes movie. It's almost as if this movie was trying to take criticism from the first movie and used it to elevate its story. Though despite all my complaints, this movie is mostly decent. The score by Mark Machina slaps harder than a plane to the face. AC/DC's Thunderstruck also being in this movie adds to the overall experience, and also the use of it in Fire and Rescue works better than certain other animated movies with the exact song. The music supports the animation upright, which got a significant upgrade in this movie. The higher quality makes this more on par with the traditional Cars installment visually, whether it comes down to the firefighting scenes or the smoke effects, coupled together with the beautiful environments of Piston Peak. The dynamic camera angles make Planes 2 visually striking and overall inspired looking. The world building feels like it was inspired by real life stuff too, with a car spin, rather than just human world elements ducted into the movie. Some of it is, like the media parodies like the Cars themed Hooters or the fact that the Cars like Unlucky Tug said, use normal drinking glasses, but everything else, they feel on par with Cars 1 and 3 in that regard. Sure, we have parodies of Howard the Duck and Chips, which just seem lazy at first, but they're kinda in line with how the first Cars parodied Pixar movies in the credits of the first movie, so car versions of non-Pixar work do exist, I guess. Other than that, I love how they make good use of the fuselage environment. Basically being a normal building but car-themed in architecture makes it accessible for vehicles while still looking recognizably human. Speaking of design philosophies, I do like how they made a conscious effort to expand automotive wildlife in the Cars universe, like the wooden bird planes, the Roomba rats, or the John Deere deer tractors. Kinda like how the cows in the first Cars movie were tractors. Same goes for the Piston Peak environments resembling locomotive parts, in the same way Radiator Springs has automotive parts in its landscape. The characters are indeed a mixed bag, but they're more likable than the ones in the first movie, like Dipper the Dusty fangirl who's essentially just Beta Cruz Ramirez now that I think about it. Dipper does get on my nerves a little bit due to the humor being hit or miss like the first Planes movie, but she's overall a decent character to watch because of her spunky personality. Not to mention Cad Spinner. Oh my goodness, Cad Spinner. The de facto chick hicks of this movie. Not because he's a racer, which he isn't, but is pretty much a selfish and cheeky prick who gets what he wants without thinking about the needs of others, pretty much abusing his power in management to mistreat his employees just in the name of business. Even it's going as far as directing the water supply from the fire squad's base to his lodge out of his own selfishness. He only cares about himself and his stupid lodge, which is not only funny, but also executed in the best way possible. Even cliched characters like Maru the forklift mechanic or Windlifter the wise Native American helicopter aren't as annoying or formulaic as say Dottie or El Chupacabra were. They have surface level personalities, but these ones are executed decently, with the derivative premises that they're at least tolerable to watch on screen. Also, I do want to mention Pulaski the Fire Engine, who is voiced by Patrick Joe Kronk Caboose Warburton, who while isn't in the movie very much, is probably my favorite side character due to his personality and tone. Speaking of good characters, I do like Blade Ranger, the Red Rescue helicopter who worked his job to honor the death of his fellow partner during a filming accident on a show from his old job. Admittedly, Blade has the least memorable backstory of the three mentor figures in the Cars franchise, but his backstory is indeed a good one. He takes initiative when he can and proves to be a force to be reckoned with, which is pretty much coupled by his VA, Eric Estrada. Another thing I do love about this movie is how it gives nuanced heart-to-heart conversations between characters. Moments like when Dusty is given news that his new gearbox has been mislabeled and not arriving anymore, or the scene where Maru tells Dusty about Blade's backstory, are all great scenes. They take their time with these characters and makes us see these vehicles not just machines, but rather individuals. On the subject of characters, the best thing about this movie is that Dusty has an inspired and great character arc. If you ignore the first movie, Planes, Fire and Rescue is a pretty good self-contained story on its own. A story about a guy who has gone to the top of the world of sports only to get handicapped himself because he didn't listen to a word his peers said. A word that, while warned in the first movie, is a great plot point in this one. We see Dusty find a new job, all because of a kerfuffle that was caused by him trying to push himself too hard one night, causing a fire and the entirety of Prop Wash Junction to get shut down, until a new firefighter could be used, all the while the previous firefighter is old and worn out, causing him to take the initiative and to find a new purpose in life. But that new purpose, you see, has its own set of challenges. We see Dusty train his hardest at Piston Peak, but with his engine shorting out, he cannot pull off that maneuver that Blade taught him, causing him to be mad. Even though Blade taught Dusty that saving lives from fires is a matter of following instructions, as well as realizing the needs of others, the former racer doesn't listen. That was until the whole waterfall scene, where for the first time ever, Dusty's decisions have reasonable consequences. While I critiqued the lack of a proper lie revealed scene earlier, I think Dusty hiding his gearbox malfunctions was still handled decently in the movie itself. Unlike Dusty flying low having no consequences in the first movie, as it ended up giving him an advantage over the other racers like the train scene, Dusty not revving his engine to the max causes huge ramifications, such as getting himself stuck in that waterfall, getting trapped in an abandoned mine, and risking Blade into a near fatal injury. Like, that scene had serious consequences that ramped up the stakes of the narrative. It's in this moment that Dusty learns that to save lives, he has to risk his own life. Knowing that Blade saved him from the fire, risking most of his life to save Dusty. While we do see Blade survive, part of me wishes he actually died, so that Dusty's character development would have had some more heartfelt reason to grow. Blade showing up fine and dandy as a Deus Ex Machina because kids movie cliche was a bad move honestly, but whatever. It's at this moment Dusty pulls off the maneuver at the bridge, saving the RV couple from certain doom. All the while his gearbox finally shorts out, causing Dusty to crash into the trees, falling into a coma for a couple of days, while his gearbox does get repaired by the end, getting his racing career back. It's a fitting touch he decides to stay with the rescue team for many years to come. Even if he now has the best of both worlds, it shows that he has grown from an impatient racer to a bona fide hero, showing how important this new job is to him. Well, a great ending to me. That's a surprisingly fitting conclusion to what started as a mediocre cash grab. It's not only amazing how this somehow decent movie has a great moral about learning to accept the circumstances of your handicap, but it's also a great moral for kids that no matter what your fears are, it's best to risk our lives to save others if it means risking life or death in the process. A message that I don't think other animated movies of this decent tier even tried to tackle, let alone present. In general, Planes Fire and Rescue is a surprisingly solid movie with earnest themes and character growth. Might have some wonky parts that just don't gel with it at all, as well as some okay characters. The main character's journey, as well as the earnest themes and message, play a part in making this movie more competent than all the other previous entries on this ranking video. You could say that Disney Toon went all in on this movie, earning a 6 out of 10 medal in the process. For any newcomers to the Cars franchise, please just watch this movie and skip the first one. That would be my recommendation if you really want to watch any of the Planes movies. I'm actually shocked at how much I like this movie this time around, and I'm glad I gave it another chance. The solidness of this film makes me wish we got that cancelled Disney Toon Cars project, Metro, which seemed to be a Cars universe take on a murder mystery / crime movie involving talking trains in a Cars version of New York City designed for locomotives. It had the potential to be on par, if not better than Planes 2, but alas, that's the harsh reality we live in. Despite the loss of Disney Toon, we at least have 2 more projects from the main hot shows at Pixar to look at. 2 truly amazing projects, the ones you've all been waiting for. At number 2, we reach truly great works on equal ground. More on that later. Starting with one of my favorite childhood movies of all time. Cars 1 is genuinely a great movie, without a hint of irony. It's one of my favorite Pixar films, even without the nostalgia goggles. Yes, I'm serious. Despite criticism from notable reviewers like The Blockbuster Buster, Mysterious Mr. Enter, or Schaefer Productions, who may not appreciate this film, I'm grateful for the voices of Cars enthusiasts like The Unlucky Tug, Piston Cup Productions, Finn the Pony, Josh Revell, and Mr. Dockett, who openly expressed their love for this simple yet charming movie. However, if I were to offer any critique, it would be directed towards the world building in both Cars 1 and 3. The universe's origin remains a mystery unlike other talking vehicle series. But unlike Thomas, where it's a part of nature, for these man-made machines to suddenly have faces, or Chuggington, where vehicles are AI-powered machines built by humans, in Cars, the race of machines appears as an intrinsic part of nature, existing everywhere, without any coexistence of other life forms. Everything is a vehicle, which I know is somewhat consistent, but it raises some questions that answering them would make this video too long. Fortunately, this movie provides enough context clues to hint at how this world functions, like how the cars consume fuel instead of human food, or the implication that they are built, as highlighted by Mac exclaiming, "Thank the manufacturer, you're alive," offers some insight. Other aspects of the world building, like the well-designed architecture or the machine-themed landscape, being a vibe of uniqueness to this world. Not Tolkien-level world building, but hey, it tried. Another aspect worth critiquing and praising is the comedy. While some lines may be slightly hit or miss, the hits truly stand out more than any of the ranking's previous entries, delivering some of the best one-liners in the entire franchise for crying out loud. The success of the comedy can be attributed to the voice performances and the tightness of the script. Like this scene.
It looks awful.
Well, it matches the rest of the town.
Additionally, Maynard's role as a foil as discussed earlier, enhances his comedic presence. He's genuinely funny in this movie because of his role as McQueen's antithesis. The music in Cars 1 is exceptional. Much like certain animated movies relying on licensed tracks like DreamWorks' very own Shrek or Megamind, the choices made for Cars, including Real Gone, Life is a Highway, Route 66, or Life Could Be a Dream, are quite superb. They seamlessly fit into the scenes where they're in, avoiding the feeling of being forced in for no apparent reason. Even the original score, composed by Randy Newman for this movie, complements a simple, laid-back atmosphere of Radiator Springs, aligning perfectly with the overall tone of this film. Cars 1 works as a movie because of one thing: its low-scope story. It's a simple, linear, simplistic story that doesn't try too hard to be anything it's not. And I think it's my favorite of the Pixar library that does this. While I find simple films like Ratatouille to have better writing, or Elemental for having a more unique world, I appreciate the simplicity in Cars 1 more because it paved the way for those movies' tones to work. On a side note, while I know Unlucky Tug said this, but I also love how this movie foreshadows and pays off stuff. Like with Lightning McQueen spinning out on the dirt in the first race, or even his joking about hating rusty cars, ends up biting him in the real bumper later. Whether it be Lightning learning to power slide on the dirt later throughout the movie, or even learning to befriend a rusty old tow truck. It's pretty neat how Pixar thought this out pretty well. My absolute favorite piece of foreshadowing that nobody brings up is the amount of build-up leading to Doc being a racer, and thus his tragic past. The first piece is Doc saying he wants McQueen out of his town because he's a race car, hinting that Doc doesn't want his past of racing to come back to him. Another piece is Doc teaching McQueen to power slide on the dirt. Why would he know this if he was just a lawyer? And this all culminates into a big emotional scene where Doc tells Lightning his tragic past. One of the many elements that show this movie has great thematic brilliance that was intricately thought and planned out. Before delving into why the morals of this movie resonate so well with me, it's worth acknowledging a common criticism: the similarities between the 80s movie Doc Hollywood and Cars, a point often raised by YouTubers like the Blockbuster Buster.
Doc Hollywood, we're talking cars. How's that, Mr. E? Michael J. Fox is Lightning McQueen, Woody Harrelson is Mater, Julie Warner is Sally, and Bernard Hughes is Doc Hudson. Fedora Freddy, you just blew my freaking mind. Even the original's a piece of unoriginal tripe.
While it's true that both Doc Hollywood and Cars share similar plot elements, such as a wealthy individual getting stuck in a town and eventually becoming kinder, as well as four of the main characters having the same roles, Cars as a movie goes beyond its basic story. The racing aspect and the themes of sacrificing the chance to win to help others adds depth to the overarching narrative. Here's my standing on this. I'm fine with taking inspiration from existing works, as long as you have a unique perspective put into the storytelling. For example, you can compare Shrek Forever After to It's a Wonderful Life, both featuring protagonists transported to a world where they don't exist, but executed in two completely different ways. Especially how the world where they don't exist is a major part of Shrek 4 compared to It's a Wonderful Life. Plus, it's not like you say Despicable Me, Wreck-It Ralph, and Megamind are all rip-offs of Shrek, as they are identical in premise. Those animated movies have the basic idea of a villain in the traditional story becoming a good guy, but are executed differently. In another comparison that's more on brand for this channel, Thomas and Friends and Chuggington share the same concept of talking trains in the community, but differ significantly in their execution. What greatly sets apart Cars from Doc Hollywood is the artistry of its passion, the genuine respect for automotive culture. The passion behind Cars 1 is evident in its accurate portrayal of Radiator Springs and its dedication to capturing the essence of real-life Route 66, drawing inspiration from the beauty of Monument Valley, even going as far as authentically replicating the atmospheres of realistic highways or racetracks too. The representation of car culture that I love about this movie is the same reason I love the vehicle representation in something like Thomas and Friends. Both have a ton of variety in vehicles that accurately look like real-life ones, from stock cars, Italian microcars, vintage and beloved classics, giant trucks, street racers, modern sports cars, or even the Model T. It's the same reason Thomas is beloved. The commitment to making these vehicles look authentic instead of just purely merchandisable eye candy. And I want to mention one thing that barely anybody brings up. Speaking of the characters being cars, I think it works well in terms of the story and themes. People always say, why aren't the characters humans? Like, seriously, the characters being cars actually works well within the story pretty well, whether it be through jokes or thematic brilliance. It's not like certain other animated movies where the characters aren't humans, but the species has no bearing on the themes of the movie. Here, Cars is something closer to like Disney's Zootopia or Blue Sky's Robots in terms of using the character species to tell the story. Lightning McQueen is presented as meaner and stronger than all the other cars in Radiator Springs because he is a car designed for one thing: racing. It's not because he's richer, it's literally because he's meant for one simple goal in his life, straight out of the factory. He never saw the beauty in life because it was only made for the track, racing in a circle to win until the next race comes to town. The other cars were designed for the road and built to be multi-purpose. Charming as they are, characters like Mater, Sally, Doc Hudson, and Luigi are vital to the story's themes. It segues into Lightning appreciating the smaller things in life by the Our Town sequence, which has him realize how much he and the other newer cars have been missing out on the slower paced moments in life, giving a purpose to this movie's smaller scope, culminating in sacrificing winning the Piston Cup just to help the king after his crash, knowing that winning doesn't mean anything to him anymore. To help Lightning helping out the town again to regain popularity, and seeing racing just as fun in games in the subsequent follow-ups. It's a great beginning to Lightning McQueen's journey as a character, and in my opinion, one of the best endings in Pixar history. Lightning's journey of discovering the true value of life stands out as one of Pixar's most profound lessons. As someone who often found myself confined indoors within my youth, this movie served as a revelation, highlighting the richness of experiences I was missing out on. It encourages all of us to embrace adventure in our lives, emphasizing that without it, we might overlook the beauty of supporting local communities or the simpler things. The Our Town montage effectively prompts the audience to recognize the significance of smaller, humble aspects of life often overlooked. Not only that, but scenes of McQueen hanging out with Mater at the fields or McQueen driving with Sally are great examples of character building moments that unlock the path to his development. Sally, meanwhile, represents what McQueen should have realized a long time ago. She used to be rich and famous like him, but realized it wasn't a life worth living because while she got what she always dreamed of, it didn't click with her. Eventually finding herself on Route 66 to realize that there's more to life than just the riches of the world. Even Chick Hicks, the movie's main antagonist, is another parallel of McQueen, albeit as more of who he could become if he never went on Route 66. Being rude, reckless, and outright selfish compared to how McQueen was at the end of the movie. Chick's victory being met with distraught feedback is pretty satisfying because honestly, it shows that even if you win as a cheater or a prick, you will never receive satisfaction with the people you know. I think this movie's great themes aren't exclusive to the younger audience. I'd argue it resonates equally with older audiences too, people like me. Particularly for those who have achieved success, wealth, and status, Cars suggests a crucial lesson. True happiness doesn't hinge on fame and fortune. Instead, it lies in appreciating the simple joys life has to offer. Personal reflections like finding contentment in solitude, cherishing friendships, enjoying companionship, and understanding the importance of selflessness are aspects I gleaned from this movie. And yet, some people choose to ignore the heartwarming and great storytelling when Cars 1 was just a boring and shallow commercial to them. People use the reception of Cars not being as good as something like The Incredibles to brush aside any nuance it had. It's fine to think that, but even if one holds that view, it reflects an ignorance of the broader narrative that this provides. Cars 1 is a narrative when put together is a well-told tale with a ton of nuance, heart, and above all, passion. In retrospect, Cars 1 deserves way more respect as a movie. While it may not reach the pinnacle of Pixar's greatest achievements like Ratatouille, WALL-E, or The Incredibles, it certainly still is a great watch for many. For a movie that was seen as very subpar back in the day, I'm happy to announce that I want to give this movie a great 9 out of 10. After enduring years of criticism for not measuring up to other Pixar works, I maintain that Cars 1 is a great film despite not necessarily being the studio's magnum opus or everybody's quart of oil. Yet it shines through its compelling story, witty humor, endearing characters, and timeless message, making it one of my personal favorites from the Pixar pantheon. An underrated classic that you may have seen, but you may give it another chance after this video. Anywho, I've been saving the best for last, and it might surprise you. Or probably not, considering I haven't talked about that one more movie yet. For the winner up at first place is a movie that I think deserves way more credit than what is usually given. For what is meant to be a course correction for fans from the aftermath of the subpar second movie and the not as good spin-offs, Cars 3 brought up a spectrum of opinions within the Cars fanbase, sparking debates over its merits and drawbacks. For those who champion its existence, they argue that Cars 3 successfully treads new ground, offering a more nuanced and mature storyline that resonates with audiences. On the flip side, detractors of Cars 3 criticize various elements of the film, arguing that the humor falls short compared to the first film, citing a perceived lack of the original's comedic spark. Others express dissatisfaction with certain aspects of the plot, feeling that the ending comes out of nowhere and ruins the movie and McQueen's story. Looking at you, Logan, Jeffy-induced, money-grubbing, audience-exploiting, cash grab, greed bag, 30-acre. You know what? Love it or hate it, Cars 3 is actually my favorite non-Toy Story Pixar follow-up, and is overall the most underrated, overhated, and underappreciated movie from the Pixar library. Admittedly, this was a hard movie to rank because I love Cars 1 and 3 equally. Choosing between the nostalgic appeal of Cars 1 and the nuanced storytelling of 3 posed a challenging task, swaying between the charm of McQueen's first adventure and the deeper narrative unveiled in the third. Yes, 3 also has good music and solid jokes like 1, but it's indeed so much more than that. Before we get into one of the movie's biggest issues and biggest achievements, for example, the characters are great. Even though the Radiator Springs gang aren't focused in on this, the new characters more than make up for it with their creative designs or show-stealing scenes, or, thematic brilliance. Music, as per usual, is amazing, especially considering Randy Newman came back to compose for this movie. Plus the licensed music, while not as memorable as Cars 1, still elevates the scene they're attached to, with my favorite being Run That Race at the beginning. Speaking of not as good, indeed Cars 3 is not necessarily as funny as the first movie. There are a lot of great jokes, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't match the magic the first movie had in some capacity. Like, you can only make so much Lightning McQueen's old jokes before it gets stale, However, even if the jokes are weaker, some jokes like Cruz Ramirez's training methods and tools like her AI voice companion Hamilton are actual plot points that help her and McQueen in the climax. Admittedly, while Cars 3 may not match the comedic brilliance of its predecessor, I think the humor alone shouldn't be the sole metric for evaluating a movie's merit. First and foremost, the story and characters should be successful. For example, some animated movies like Blue Sky's Robots had some hit or miss jokes, but it's a good movie with great characters and themes nonetheless. Drawing parallels with the Shrek series again, Cars 1 emerges as the go-to movie for laughter, akin to the first Shrek, yet much like Shrek 2 and Shrek Forever After, Cars 3 distinguished itself by weaving a richer narrative tapestry and delving into thematic elements with more profound implications while sacrificing laughs for genuinely great storytelling. In fact, while Cars 3 does have some worse elements than the first, I think the highs of the story, themes, and character development from the first movie are revved up from 0 to 60 in this. In the realm of hit or miss Pixar follow-ups and brand extensions, especially as of late with stuff like Lightyear or the upcoming Inside Out 2 as of recording this video, Cars 3 stands out as an example of a follow-up that not only expands on the universe's lore greatly with elements like Doc's past or Rusty's as a company being elaborated on, with new characters that feel in tune with the world established in the first, but it also crafts a genuine and satisfying conclusion to the saga. Just like the prequel, Monsters University, another underrated classic from the Pixar library, Cars 3 as a sequel contributes meaningfully to the overarching narrative. Unlike Incredibles 2, which opted for minimal effort, ending up feeling more generic without significantly enhancing the original, Cars 3 follows the format set up by the Toy Story saga, and to some extent Finding Dory. Sequels that manage to build upon existing plot points, evolving them to something more substantial and, dare I say, heartfelt. In essence, Cars 3 navigates the sequel landscape with finesse, merging elements of nostalgia with commitment to evolving the narrative. It references the first movie a ton, don't get me wrong, but it does so in a way that feels like fan service done right, if you catch my drift. It stands bumper to bumper with Toy Story's ability to craft sequels that not only honor the legacy of the first, but also elevate the storytelling to new heights. Much like Toy Story 3, Cars 3 provides a conclusive ending, bringing closure to the animated saga. Even though Toy Story 4 exists and is a good movie on its own, the existence of that epilogue in my eyes shouldn't discount the greatness of 3. Just as the Toy Story saga bid farewell with grace twice, Cars 3 feels like a love letter to the series in the most respectful way possible. Again, with the Shrek comparisons, a parallel with Shrek Forever After, another underrated gem in the sequel landscape, can also be drawn. Both Shrek 4 and Cars 3 were given mixed responses in their respective fan bases, but in my eyes, they greatly pay homage to what made the first installment great, retooling and expanding on themes, offering a broader scope, and ultimately delivering a satisfying finale. Cars 3 stands out, not only as a successful sequel to a beloved classic, but also as a compelling character study of Lightning McQueen. The movie takes on an ambitious task of not just continuing the narrative of the first, but also delving into the deeper layers of its central character. McQueen's character undergoes a significant evolution in this installment, adding complexity and depth to his persona. Initially, in this movie, we see Lightning enjoying racing as a great pastime in the aftermath of the first Cars movie, as presented in the THQ video games and in the opening of 3. However, when confronted by the emergence of next-gen racers, led by Jackson Storm, Lightning feels compelled to intensify his training, not out of burning desire to race, but due to the fear that his legacy might crumble. The pivotal retirement package offered by Sterling, emphasizing merchandising and commercialization of the racing legacy, cleverly mirrors the criticism that the Cars franchise has faced in the real world, about being a sellout cash cow franchise. A clever meta-narrative touch that adds layers to Lightning's motivation. A major player in said motivation is Jackson Storm, who I feel like is this movie's equivalent to Chick Hicks, not because he's kinda funny, but rather he acts as a counterculture to Lightning McQueen. A piece of thematic brilliance with the themes of cycles repeating is how Lightning McQueen crashed at the Los Angeles International Speedway the same way the King did. However, unlike McQueen, Jackson never helped him and decided to become the first rookie to win the Piston Cup, the very goal McQueen wanted to achieve in the first. While less funny than Hicks, Storm is a great parallel because unlike Hicks, he feels more like a reflection of McQueen, in not just his more contrasting angular design, but also his egotistical and manipulative personality. His existence fuels McQueen's character development as he fears what happened to Doc Hudson would happen to him. This character development is further enhanced by the introduction of Cruz Ramirez, a seemingly annoying trainer at first to the number 95, but soon discovers her value after a pretty heartfelt scene after Cruz win at Thunder Hollow. As McQueen trains with her, he comes to realize her dreams of becoming a racer, leading to a significant turning point in the narrative. McQueen's decision to allow Cruz to pursue her aspirations marks an intentional departure from the initially self-centered character we encountered in the first film. Cars 3 successfully makes Lightning a more essential and relatable character, resonating with the audience on a more profound level than his portrayal in the original, showing how far he's changed, showing that he is a changed individual who has grown up, coinciding with the themes of growth in Cars 3. This movie explores themes of aging, legacy, cycles of life, and the fear of becoming irrelevant in a changing world. It's ultimately a film exploring the concept of legacy and passing the torch, delving into the growth that comes with aging, both in years and as an individual. The storyline navigates the usual concern of individuals as they age, fearing their impact on the world might diminish. McQueen's journey becomes a metaphorical representation of this fear, using the fact he's a car to this movie's advantage, especially as cars in the real world get phased out for newer and better models, being the Piston Cup next gens. But it is through his interaction with Cruz that the movie delivers its poignant message, that even as we grow older, there will always be individuals who will appreciate and carry forward our legacy. The scene in Smokey's garage, where McQueen realizes how much he meant to Doc, is the best scene in the entire movie. Showing that while sport is a part of our lives, the true satisfaction in that is passing the torch to another individual, finding someone we appreciate, finding someone that appreciates our work and what we did, someone that appreciates the legacy of why we came here and what we stand for. To address the elephant-sized Volkswagen in the room to explain the satisfaction mentioned earlier, the decision for McQueen to pass the torch on to Cruz to do Doc Hudson's flip against Storm instead of winning the race himself is essential to this movie's themes. While some may have desired a more conventional victory in the form of Lightning winning alone, especially considering the alternate ending Pixar ultimately scrapped due to it not being a good story decision in Brian Fee's words, the decision to have McQueen step aside aligns with the established themes of this movie and even echoes back to the dynamics between Doc and McQueen in the first film. A dynamic that, while being from the first movie, ties into the themes of this movie's tapestry, completing a parallel that Doc had against racing a rookie while being trained by Smokey, with it happening again with Cruz getting trained by McQueen to face Storm. It ties into the aforementioned themes of cycles, with another parallel showing McQueen giving up his first ever victory to give an old driver his last chance to race in the first movie. Now McQueen gives up his last chance to win to help somebody young achieve their first ever victory. It's a perfect parallel that I'm shocked people haven't discussed yet. This movie cleverly challenges the traditional sports movie formula, emphasizing the importance of mentorship, passing the torch, and realizing that one's legacy isn't solely defined by their personal victories. In a landscape where predictable endings often prevail, especially in animated movies, Cars 3 stands as a testament to Pixar's willingness to subvert expectations and deliver a conclusion that resonates with the overarching themes of the franchise. It reinforces the cyclical nature of mentorship and legacy, creating a more meaningful and memorable resolution that transcends the boundaries of a typical animated sports film. If any other studio had taken the reins, Cars 3 might have opted for McQueen winning, missing the opportunity to build upon the fantastic thematic foundation set up by its predecessor. Cars as a franchise, at its best, is about subverting expectations from a traditional sports movie. Usually in movies like Rocky or Karate Kid, it's a story about an individual training and growing before he wins in the end. But in this franchise, when it's not being horrible, is capable of subverting the traditional sports movie facade. For example, Cars 1 posed the question of what happens when an athlete at his prime realizes that sports isn't the thing that defines his life. Planes 2 question what happens when an athlete is at his prime, but experiences a handicap and the struggles that person faces in that situation. Cars 3 here focuses on the questions some athletes face when they are of age and past their prime, and what to do in harsh times like that. It serves as a study of the fears and struggles one faces when they realize they may no longer have a defined purpose in this world. Even in our darkest moments, when we feel our passion has no further use, this movie reminds us that, yes, inspiration can persist. Retirement doesn't mark the end of our careers. There will always be someone to inspire. The impact of the final scenes left a lasting impression on me during my initial viewing, though its significance eluded me at the time. Over the years, as I explored a myriad of intricate movies, both animated and live action, and pursued personal growth through my hobbies and education, I encountered moments where I felt past my prime even if I was just young back then. The uncertainty and fear crept in, making me question my worth and feeling lost in my perceived inadequacy. Yet, when those moments arise, I turn to this movie, a reminder that there will always be ways to re-engage and inspire others. This is the reason why this movie is as good as Cars 1, being a 9 out of 10 and all. Even though it has worse jokes, you cannot deny there was the same amount of love and heart as the first movie with an equally great theme. But if that's the case, Wakster, why did you rank this higher than Cars 1? Even though I think both are great, I think 3 resonates more with me, not just because it's a beautiful swan song for the Cars franchise as a grand finale to an underappreciated classic, but rather, its themes of aging and growing up means a lot more to me now than it did back in 2017. As somebody with hobbies and passions growing up, I find this movie to be deeply relatable to me. And I guess that's the power of animation. Even if most are meant for broad audiences, the best of the medium has a lot of powerful themes and messages that resonate with audiences of any age, even if scenes kid-friendly based on looks. Even though there are better animated movies than Cars 1 and 3 that are just as, if not more powerful, I hope this video gets a specific message out there beyond just Cars 3 is a great movie. Even though you are in your toughest moment, when people make you think you're too old for something to enjoy, or when you feel too down on your luck, feeling worthless in this world, just remember, friend, there will always be people who will appreciate what you do. There will always be individuals who get touched by your life's contributions to the world through your talents. And that, my friend, is when you find yourself. To finally answer the question that many, including the unlucky Tug, have probably answered, is Cars a good franchise? Well, no, but actually yes. Undoubtedly, the Cars franchise presents both criticism and admiration. In fact, I can say one half is good and another half is bad. On the surface, it's so easy to label it as a cynical merchandise-driven series, coupled by stupid and confusing worlds that cast a shadow on its overall reputation. The stain of 3 lackluster projects seems undeniable and has tainted the franchise, leaving a sour taste in the mouths of many. Yet on the flip side, while the franchise boasts a project that can be classified as merely okay, there are 3 far above average efforts that stand out as hard work until the end of time. Well, not just above average, sometimes beyond above average. Great even. In these 3 movies that manage to balance witty humor with memorable characters, heartwarming moments, and a nuanced storytelling approach that transcends the nature of just selling toys for children and collectors into something truly worth your time. I'm gonna take a page out of Unlucky Tug's book by also admitting that Pixar's Cars, with its detours included, remains a franchise infused with passion. This passion shows a profound respect for various slices of history, be it racing, Route 66, classic Americana, wartime aircraft, the wilderness, fire rescue history, Japanese street racing, spy thrillers, Gaslands culture, or dinosaur movies. Even if a Cars project is meant to be a cash grab first and foremost, there was at least inspiration, passion, or at least moments of risk-taking. I applaud the people at either Pixar or Disney Toon for building a franchise that the people working on it wanted to make. In stark contrast to franchises like the Minions/Despicable Me franchise, or even the Trolls franchise, which, despite some admittedly decent elements, they both tend to feel excessively safe, corporate, tacky, or downright soulless at times. While also selling tons of merchandise just like Cars, those movies don't try anything remarkably groundbreaking or unique and play by the rules and numbers in the most sanitized way imaginable without a unique voice. Pixar's Cars stands out as a franchise with a unique personality because it doesn't shy away from taking risks. Even in its darkest hours, it strives for breathing life into concepts that seem simple and go above and beyond with them. Even if the outcome is kinda doo-doo sometimes. As a series, Cars can appeal to all ages and sometimes have things that can appeal to older viewers even in the places you might not expect, like a dumb spin-off about airplanes or an awful sequel about spies. While not necessarily on the same level as other, more widely respected animated franchises like, say, Toy Story, Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, or How to Train Your Dragon, the effort Cars as a series boasts should be recognized. Through its legacy, it has garnered a dedicated fan base, proving that even in its missteps, the franchise has indeed left a tire-track-shaped mark on the public consciousness, inspiring millions of content creators worldwide, with numerous ideas sparked by a simple movie about learning to let go of your ego. While I cannot pretend that it's flawless, Cars is a franchise that I'm glad to see grow up as I grew older, for the several years I've been on this earth. And despite having interest in both talking vehicles and just vehicle-related stuff, this is a franchise I'll occasionally revisit now and again till the day I die. Overall, I wish this franchise the best in any future endeavors it may have, regardless if it turns out bad or good. I'll always love cars, dents and all. I hope you had a great time here today, folks, listening to me ramble on and on about the funny Haha Kachao franchise for a very long time indeed. Probably more so than I can account for. It's time to say goodnight to the folks here at Radiator Springs. This has been Wakster. Like, comment, ring the bell, and subscribe. And most importantly of all, stay wacky! Oh, also remember to commission me for some personalized character art for at least $20. Email me at wackinator05@gmail.com with details and more in the description. Bye!